Now, I saw, of course, your website where you said you're steering to be India's largest integrated power company with a 130 gigawatt target, diversified fuel mix, and a 600 billion unit company in terms of generation by 2032. That's what NTPC says. I guess that's a consolidated number for thermal and renewables. What role does renewables play in this target?
So I'll probably right now stick to the renewables numbers more in physical terms. So the
Okay.
target which we have set for ourselves is to do 60 gigawatts of renewables by 2032. The
Okay.
broader objective is that our renewables portfolio should be as large or as close to the coal-based portfolio by 2032. So that's the broader plan on which we are working, and so that's the idea. I will not like to get into the number on the financial side because that's a bit premature right now. Because the renewable numbers, as you know, in terms of revenue will be much lower because the energy generation from renewables is much lower compared to the coal-based portfolio. Yeah.
So that means now you have roughly 57 gigawatt of coal overall. At least that's
Yeah.
your website says. So what you say then implies that by 2032 there will be very little addition in coal, and
Yeah. So
it will be only
currently,
renewables.
no, actually that may not happen because initially that was the idea, but recently, as
Mhm.
you might have seen, the government is also keen to increase the coal-based portfolio baseline
True.
in the country because of the view in view of the way the demand has grown significantly over
True.
the last year. For example, last year the demand growth at national level was more than 10%.
Mhm.
So, keeping that in mind and looking at the possibility of demand increasing significantly, and assuming the fact that much of this demand, the peak demand as referred to, generally comes during evening hours. So the role of so there's need to have the option to supply power on round-the-clock basis, also meeting the peak demand. So which is why there has been a kind of re a need to retrade the role of coal, and some coal bills will happen. Of course, this has to happen in line with the government planning and how the states are willing to offtake the power. So that's why I said the initial idea was to actually have similar size, but now probably we'll try to do closer to that capacity. It may or may not be exactly same, but it will be there. But then on the other hand, it's also a fact that renewables also, I mean, assuming we get good traction in terms of building the renewables, we might actually upscale this number as well. So this, we still have some time to go. And
What kind of breakup the 60 gigawatts could have, in terms of wind, solar, or biomass? Is there anything planned in terms of targets? Would solar be the main component?
solar and wind will be the main component. We are not looking at biomass per se in as part of the 60,000 megawatt.
Okay.
Solar and wind, but it's a bit difficult to actually split solar and wind. But what we are
Mm-hmm.
saying is that up till now, of course, wind has been a very, very small component. But as we are getting into building a pipeline which is looking at providing power round the clock basis, so we are looking at supplying renewable energy on round the clock basis, then the role of wind increases significantly. So, what I'll try to give you is a slightly different way of looking at 60 gigawatts. What we're
Okay.
looking at out of this 60 gigawatts, if I have to create a portfolio mix, so say around 40, 35 to 40 gigawatts would come through long-term PPAs, like through the bid-based projects or flexibilization scheme, and so on and so forth. About almost 15 to 20 gigawatts would come through short-term, medium-term PPAs, which might include C&I customers, which might include even exchange-based trading. And about 5 gigawatts would be, as of now, dedicated for production of green hydrogen. So that's the tentative number, but it comes with the caveat which I gave earlier because this is a fungible number. And if we do really look at somehow increasing our portfolio, we get traction on the hydrogen side, we get more traction on doing more and more hybrid or round the clock power, then the combination of solar and wind will increase, and then we'll also be doing a lot of storage also.
Okay. So in terms of the what's happened is in India's case, I mean, I think globally also around 30% is now I think solar and wind, largely out of the total 410-11 gigawatt mix. But generation-wise, it is hardly 11-12%. So in your overall generation mix of, let's say, 600 billion unit target which you have by 2032, what kind of role will your renewables play? The government is aiming for 50% non-fossil fuel. I guess that includes hydro and nuclear and everything else.
Yes,
But roughly what percentage will your renewables play in generation? It seems to me that is more critical now than just install capacity.
So that's another way to look at it. But I think this is a point I mentioned earlier in terms of the capacity utilization factor, for example. Renewables have a much lower number as compared to what coal-based or nuclear can do. So you're absolutely right when you say that when government is looking at the total requirement of energy in 2030-32, they are talking about having almost close to 50% or over 40% coming from non-fossil sources. But then again, they are also saying that in terms of installed capacity only. But if you look at the national level, for example, if you look at pure renewables or variable renewables, if I may use that word for a moment, so that contributes roughly around 10 to 11% of the total energy generation in the country. And if you add to that hydro and nuclear also, then that number increases to about 22 to 23%. So even with almost 120, 25 odd gigawatt of renewables out of 400 odd, which is over 25%, the contribution in terms of energy terms is around 10, 11% only. So even if I do hypothetically a 50-50 split, so that contribution will be smaller. But what we are definitely looking at, because up till now it was a lot of solar and wind on plain vanilla basis. But now more and more, for example, today the pipeline that I'm working on, which is about 20 gigawatts, if I may say so, in terms of the contracts we have signed or the bids we have won. So that includes almost half of that is round the clock power. So
hybrid.
Not only hybrid, that's hybrid plus storage. So we will be supplying round the clock renewable power to, for example, we recently won a bid for railways to supply 500 megawatts of RTC power. So that will.
So will you be using will you use thermal then? Will you use some bit of coal?
No. This is pure play renewable. Pure play. Pure. So that's why then we signed 2 agreements with large C&I customers, adding up to almost 2,000 megawatts. So this 2,000 plus 500 megawatts of, if I add the railways requirement, for example, this will actually entail setting up capacity of almost close to 4 times of this number. So 10 gigawatts of solar plus wind I'll have to create, because a large chunk of that will go into storage. So these 2 capacities will not only supply during whenever they are available, large chunk will also go into storage, which will be used to supply during the non-renewable hours. So then, in that case, the share of renewable energy also will increase significantly.
And but what about storage? I mean, right now it seems to be very expensive, more of a kind of a pilot proposition rather than a commercially viable.
No, I will not say that. Actually, in fact, recently we have concluded a bid for 3,000 megawatt hour of energy storage. And what we did was, this bid we had issued, I think, in the month of September. We got the final offers in the month of December or January, if I remember correctly. So we are in the process of taking the final internal approvals. So this here, and we'll be using this kind of storage. So the lowest number, I would say, is pretty decent by today's standard. You are right when we talk about battery storage, for example. The battery storage numbers which came out in a recent bid by SECI are significantly higher. But in this case, the lowest offer has come from pump storage. So that number is, I would say, pretty acceptable even to the buyers. So that is what we are using to supply to these customers. Will be used, I will say. This is still to the electrons are still to flow, this is how it will happen.
So coming to storage again, what kind of tariff, I mean, I'm saying roughly, not related exactly, but in the market, what kind of structure you're looking at for tariffs? Pump storage on one side, suppose pure battery, what kind of per kilowatt hour, what are we looking at? The cost of supply.
Today, today, for example, it's almost 2x. The per unit cost of battery is almost twice or close to double of what we get through the pump storage. Which is why your statement that commercial utilization of battery is still some time away. Maybe that's why a lot of work is being done in terms of R&D and really trying to look at how the costs can be reduced. If I can refer to the tender which we had done, we actually issued a technology agnostic tender because many of these battery guys, they told us that if you can give us scale in terms of maybe we'll be able to come down, but incidentally, they were not able to match. So in fact, after concluding that last bid of 3,000 megawatt hour, we have recently issued another bid for 9,000 megawatt hour of storage. So there again, we are open to try any technology as long as they can be the most cost competitive.
So when you say this was twice of pump storage, what is pump storage compared to a pure solar or wind play? Without storage.
You see, yeah. So you have to compare only the storage cost. That's what I'm saying. If you compare the storage cost per unit storage cost, then battery is almost or close to double of what it is today. This is the last two bids which we have seen. So that is why there has been a lot of momentum towards pump storage also, and government is also promoting that if this pump storage at least large capacity can be created in the country over the next 4 to 5 years, then that will also help in energy transition on an overall basis.
What kind of tariff you are looking at in these storage schemes, roughly?
Look, ideally, the aim is to beat the tariff of any other option, any other competing option, for example. So if I set up any coal-based station or a nuclear power station, which can supply on a like-to-like basis, storage and all, which is why we are saying that the latest round of bids which railways conducted for RTC power, they came in at almost 4 rupees per unit. So
that is much cheaper than gas-based.
Yeah, gas in India is not in competition at all because it is. I mean, we don't have any gas and we have to import all the gas, so that's not competing. But if we have to compete with the new coal-based project, then it's almost matching. I mean, if you look at in terms of, or I will say the one thing which is in favor of renewables compared to fossil fuel is that there will be no price escalation on the renewable side, and on the fossil side, always there will be, the way the hydrocarbon prices increase, there will be a reflection of that. So we are almost there, even at the round-the-clock basis. So give or take, I'll say 50 paisa here or there, we should be able to compete.
And this is pump storage you're talking about, sir, right? 4 rupees tariff.
Yeah. In this case, of course. I mean, I'm saying that is the winning bid which came in for that tender. So
now, so you also, in terms of investments, I mean, you said you don't want to talk much about finances, but you must be having some kind of number for your planned investments in green energy projects. Like IOC came out with a recent number of 2 lakh crores or something over a certain period of time. That's, I guess, spending and investment. But is there any such number where you have that you're planning to allocate for your projects to meet your targets?
On a ballpark basis, if you see, if I have to do 60 gigawatts, then I'm basically looking at almost close to $40 billion. That's the kind of numbers. So, like I said, it's ballpark by 2033. And this is on a ballpark basis because beyond a point, you have to, kind of extrapolate that this is the costing today and this is what will be. So something like $40 billion. That's the number we look at.
Sir, but in terms, you've spoken of renewable targets. What about for green hydrogen, green ammonia? I know that you have been in touch, I think, venture with Greenco also for supplying for a green ammonia project. And also you have tied up with IOC for some projects. What are your plans on those two of green hydrogen? That 5 million ton which the government says, what will be NTPC's role in that?
So both the cases which you refer to, Indian Oil and Greenco, there we will be supplying the green power. So we are not setting up the facility for ammonia. In the case of Indian Oil, of course, this will be supplying power to the refinery. And in the case of Greenco, they will be using this to produce green ammonia for export or whatever. That is what we understand. But on our own, also we are looking at, in fact, we are the first guys who have actually launched the pilot on green hydrogen. We, in the month of January, I think 2nd January to be precise, we started blending green hydrogen into the city gas pipeline at our station in Gujarat. So although it's a pilot, like I said, because we need to study as per the direction of the PNGRB, who is the pipeline regulator. So we have started doing 5%, then we'll gradually go to 10, 15, 20. Similarly, sometime in September, we'll be launching the green hydrogen bus in Ladakh. So we started work there. But these are all pilots. We also recently signed an agreement with the Indian Army, where we'll be providing them hydrogen-based power supply solutions, in forward areas. So these are all things which are there. But on supply of green hydrogen, green ammonia, we already have 2 or 3 discussions going on. It will not be appropriate for me to actually give out the names at this moment. But these are on commercial scale. So these are on commercial
domestic
scale.
Investors or foreign investors?
No. So these are domestic companies. These are domestic organizations. They need it for themselves. So that is how it's going to be. So we are also parallelly looking at. In fact, we are doing a DPR for 1,000 ton per day ammonia project at Gujarat. So, and we are in the process. Yeah. So once the DPR is ready, we have a better sense of what the numbers are and how the costing would be. Because we have been approached by a couple of other people also for supply of green ammonia. One of the other things we are doing separately is the creation of a hydrogen hub. That is what we are going to do in the state of Andhra Pradesh. So if you have seen the National Green Hydrogen Mission, the government has actually identified that they'll be supporting 2 green hydrogen hubs. The idea is that we create a large setup where people can come in and set up not only ammonia production facility, but also, say, for example, electrolyzer manufacturing facility, ancillary service production facility. So we already had a large piece of land in Andhra Pradesh, which we had identified for a coal-based project earlier. Since that is not happening, in discussion and with the approval of the government of Andhra Pradesh, that it's close to Visakhapatnam, so it's close to the port also. So that is where we'll be starting the work soon. And this could be another area where it will not all be done by NTPC. We'll also have investors doing the manufacturing part, but this will also give us location where we can set up the ammonia and do the export part also. So this is another area which we are looking at very closely. We already started work on the DPR for this also.
And how big will this green hydrogen? That will be your plant. The green hydrogen plant will be yours. That hub. Or
yeah. No, not only us. Like I said, I mean, it's a large piece of land. So for production of hydrogen and ammonia, you don't need too much land. You need land for producing electricity. So that has to be somewhere else. So this is strategically located, like I said, close to the ports, Vizag port also. So the export potential is also very good from here. So once we are ready with the DPR and once we are ready with the offtake agreements also, then we'll decide how much we'll do and how much we'll let out for other people.
So right now, what are the green hydrogen projects which are, either in the planning stage or, commercial scale green hydrogen projects? Are you implementing any?
Yeah, no, we're not implementing any. We are in the discussion stage, like I said. So these are 2 projects with the 2 industries. These are in the range of about 100 and 150 tons per day kind of projects. So let's see. I mean, like I said, probably it's not fair on my part to talk about the companies
So
right now.
you'll produce it and supply.
Yeah, so we'll produce and supply. It'll be all green because in our case, we don't have any other option available with us. So we're all green.
You have about 7 to I think 8 gigawatts of gas-based plants, which there is this entire issue of gas. Are there any possibilities for mixing green hydrogen, blending it with the gas and running those plants? Have you looked at it? No. That is still far away.
So what we have done, of course, this has been handled by main thermal group in NTPC, within NTPC. So we have actually signed MOUs with the OEMs, the people who supply the gas turbine. So the first step is to understand that how much blended gas can be fired into the turbine, and do we need to do any modifications, and without modification, how much we can do, and with modification, how much we can do. So that work is still under discussion and finalization in terms of how to take that forward. So only after that, probably we'll be able to share details with you that how much we can do. As I understand, even globally, this has not been tried. And Japan is also looking at this possibility of blending hydrogen with the natural gas. But of course, like we discussed earlier, availability of natural gas itself for power generation is a big challenge in India. So I'm not sure how much of that will eventually happen, but we need to be technologically clear that we have this possibility also available.
So this number you quote, I mean, from your targets, given the ballpark numbers of investments and tens of billions of dollars, I'm sure NTPC alone will not be going in. You'll need to have investors and what kind of response you see on two fronts? One from the banks in India, on financial institutions, on lending money for such projects. Second, what about investor interest, especially from overseas, from maybe pension funds or private equity? What are you seeing?
Look, on the debt side, the banks and the financial institutions, I mean, for them, the logic is very simple. One, of course, we are an NTPC subsidiary. So what you can see behind me are the two subsidiaries, NTPC Green Energy Limited and NTPC Renewable Energy Limited. And so to that extent, we have already started raising funds from the market. We have not, in fact, we have received very good response whenever we have gone to the market to raise funds. And I can say that they're almost at par with what NTPC is getting. In fact, in some cases, people are willing on account of our credentials being fully green, because we are a fully green entity. We do not have any iota of any other color, if I may say so.
Yeah.
So that's not an issue. We can raise funds, and generally, if the projects are bankable, then also the lenders are quite happy to lend. On the equity side, we did run an exercise last year.
Recently, sir, right?
Yeah, recently. So that the idea was to get on board as strategic investor. So that has not been very successful, if I may say so. So that process is more or less closed. But right now, we have a commitment from NTPC to provide the equity up to a certain level, which should be okay for some time. But we'll probably need to go to the market either through an IPO or something else sometime later this year or early next year.
So, 2 points. Is there any reason? Is it because until last year at least, prior to all this interest rate crisis and banking crisis, you had all Total pumping money in Adani. You had a lot of investor interest. Is it the global environment that has caused this kind of?
Not easy for me to answer that question, but yes, you're right. I mean, globally, actually, one part is that a lot of these global funds are already invested in various platforms in India. So for them, it's also a choice whether they want to expand further or not. But practically everyone is looking at projects. I mean, in all those cases, what we have seen is that the broader mandate, this is the discussions we've had with these guys. So they are keen to look at projects which are bankable and which make long-term sense for them, particularly the pension funds and all these guys. So I mean, if we do go to the market, we are hopeful that as and when we do, obviously, I mean, we have to keep in mind that we'll have to ensure that it's the right timing and all these things happen.
Hello.
Yeah. I think now you're back.
Plan to raise, sir? I mean, roughly how much would you need this extra equity to carry your plan?
Too premature right now. Too premature.
What about
Because we
green
haven't
bonds?
put-
Have you?
Yeah, so green bonds is something which we have discussed earlier also. But incidentally, in India, there is no the word which people have used is greenium, so to say. So there is no greenium per se vis-a-vis the other bonds. So what we are
Okay, you
saying,
mean
while internationally there is some difference between the interest rate you get there, but here it's almost the same. So, but yes, we'll do bonds. I mean, if the green tag helps. I mean, we have, like I said, all the green credentials. So, but right now, whatever we have raised is these are direct loans.
are renewable project costs increasing, sir, it seems, because of module costs and all? Do you see a rise in tariffs?
Yeah.
I mean, can you see the rupee to rupee tariffs now or not? I mean, it's the thing of the
No.
past.
So you see, all these tariffs are reflective of the input cost, including the cost of debt. So in fact, the recent auction, which I believe Gujarat concluded, the tariff was almost ₹2.75. So I mean, this is reflection of how the market is at that point of time. I'm not saying ₹2 will not happen in the future. Might happen if everything gets aligned. So,
And one more thing, sir, regarding your targets, your renewable targets alone near term. You have about 10 gigawatt in the pipeline, right? And 3
we have
point.
no, we have about 20 gigawatts in the pipeline.
Okay.
Out of which 3.2 is already operational. Another close to 4.8 or 9 is under construction. And almost another 10, 12 is on the drawing board, a big chunk of which we plan to start work on the ground. I mean, the engineering part is going on the ground also within the next few months, I must say.
And finally, last question on India's renewable plans. They have announced new plans to have 50 gigawatt of tendering every year, I guess, to catch up basically, because the things slowed down in the last 3 years. And how do you see that? How do you see that happening? Because in the last 2 years there has been a bit of a it has slowed. Tendering has slowed a bit. Then the COVID and then rising module costs, supply challenges. Do you see this 50 happening? It's a very ambitious annual target. And what will be NTPC's role?
No, in that case, in that particular case, of course, the government has decided that they will bid out 50 gigawatts every year. And they have basically divided this 50 gigawatt into 4 companies: SECI, NTPC, NHPC, and SJVN. So we've all been given targets. So a calendar for this year, for example, has been issued. This was the month-wise breakup of how the bids have to be invited. I think what you said earlier is absolutely right. Because if we have to do 500 odd or 450 odd gigawatts of RE capacity, so we need to move. And much of this capacity needs to be bid out and start work by 2027, 28. I mean, only then we meet the 2030 number.
Sure.
So it's more of a calculation that way. And yes, we are hopeful because there are challenges, definitely. I mean, there's challenge of land, there's challenge of evacuation, there's challenge of supply chain, there's challenge of financing. And most of all, there's a challenge of offtake. I mean, all this power, whatever is bid out, needs to be taken up. Otherwise, the project doesn't start until the PPA is signed. So these are all challenges, but we are quite hopeful because the government, for example, is now looking at the pooled tariff kind of mechanism. So maybe it will be easier for the discoms to sign the PPAs. And so all these kind of things are there. It is challenging, ambitious, yes, but we are part of the larger RE developer, development group. So we have to make it happen.
Anything else, sir, you'd like to say about NTPC renewables plans, or something I missed?
No, I think you covered it all. So it's all good. The only probably one line I generally keep saying everywhere that, and I think you alluded to it earlier on. This is probably one of the largest, if I may say so, energy transition pivot by any industry, definitely in India, and I would say one of the largest globally also. So this is something which we are attempting to do, and in that pivot, renewables is going to play a very important role. But this will not be the only thing, but this will be the major way of doing it. So this is what we are.
Thank you, sir.